Hello, my name is Nick Moore and I work in a communications role with the Australian Information Security Association. And today I'm joined by Magda Chelly, who's a serial cybersecurity entrepreneur and a former Chief Information Security Officer and well-known speaker at cybersecurity events. Magda is joining me from Singapore, where she's based. So Magda, how are you? How are you today?
Hi, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to have this opportunity to discuss together. And I'm good, still working from my box room in Singapore because, I don't see the light. We're still into very strict rules, but I'm really happy and continuing to work on cybersecurity gigs. So perfect.
So Magda, do I detect an accent there? Where are you? You're in Singapore now, but where are you from originally?
I would say the question around my accent has been a challenge for certain people because they didn't find where exactly it comes from. And I guess this is the main reason because I lived in 5 different countries and I speak 5 different languages. So I think there is a little bit of mix of different languages, but I originally come from Poland and I am precisely from Krakow.
Oh, from Krakow, okay. And what was it like for you growing up there?
Well, it's, I haven't had the chance to grow there for a long time. I left Krakow when I was 6 or 7 years old with my parents, obviously. So my memories are very much restricted in terms of, in general, remembering what happened during those first 6 or 7 years of my life. But then I had the opportunity to grow in North Africa, which is precisely in Tunisia. And those memories are much more important, and they built or shaped my personality, who I am today, I think, much more than Poland.
Okay, and so you were a Polish girl in North Africa. How did you find your way to a career in technology and specifically cybersecurity?
I think it was a very interesting journey. First of all, there is a very strong position of women in North Africa, in particular in Tunisia. And my father has origins from there as well. So I have some blood from North Africa as well, which I like to say. And their position on women, again, has been growing much faster than, in my opinion, in any other country, because there was a lot of disparity and challenges previously across the latest years. So Tunisia is considered one of the countries that have made major improvements in egalitarian opportunities, in women leadership roles, etc. So bringing that into my story, it helped me not only to get access, of course, to the right education and feel empowered, but as well it helped me with the approach to understand what I want to do in my career. So I have been pushed very, very hard by my father to go into engineering. And when I say pushed, yeah, he literally considered that I was so good in math and physics that I shouldn't do anything else apart engineering. There was no choice for him. So at the beginning, when I was around 16 to 18, I wanted to go into a business field because I considered myself really from already a very young age, driven and excited by business opportunities, by building company, etc. But my father considered that I should first target an engineering degree and from there eventually build the business capabilities. And I think I thank him very much for that because it ended up being a fantastic combination. And again, by having the opportunity to start my journey into technology in Tunisia, I actually had the opportunity to follow a French-based education system. So where any engineer needs to go through 2 years of very technical preparatory school before going into the particular industry specific or specialization. Like in my case, I went into telecommunication engineering. But the 2 first years were very, very hard, where a very low percentage of students get through a national exam and they can go to an engineering school. And I think that those 2 years were the hardest in my whole, young life as such.
Okay, and did you say Tunisia?
Yes, indeed.
That's where that's where the first Star Wars was filmed.
Yes, indeed, it was. And it was in the south of Tunisia. And I had the opportunity to visit again that site in 2019. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world to visit. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I introduced you as a serial cyber entrepreneur. How would you describe your role now in cybersecurity?
I would say, Nick, that I evolved from, very quickly in a short period of time in different kind of roles around my career. And that's perhaps sometimes which might feel a little bit strange or questionable by certain of our industry peers or in general by other people, especially that they do not understand or have visibility about my career. But one point that I think is really important to bring on to our audience is that my working days have been really long. And when I say long, I'm talking about minimum of 12 to 14, 16 hours per day across many years, not only those latest years. So because of that, of course, when I was younger, as an example, when I was doing my PhD in France, which I actually graduated from Télécom Sud Paris at that time, I was doing my PhD, I was working already, and I had some entrepreneur journey already started at that point in time. So again, my perception of experience or how do you evolve in career was all about focusing on learning more and trying to actually, this is as well, I think, an interesting point, trying to do different things so I can understand how others perform their activities. What are the different challenges when you are working in insurance, when you're working in cybersecurity, when you are teaching. I even had the opportunity to be a teacher in a high school in France for several months. And again, I think that's where I shaped my career by driving all this curiosity about trying new things, and not only different countries, different cultures, but learning as much as I could. Obviously, that is not sustainable on a very long time, and especially when you grow a little bit older. So 13 years after, even if my days are very, very, very busy, I try to focus on one thing at a time rather than three, which helps, So recently, I had, in 2016, I founded Responsible Cyber, which is a cybersecurity company, and that company builds a SaaS platform for SMEs. And of course, when I started that journey, it didn't start by building the platform. I was just a cybersecurity consultant, and by consultant, I mainly was advising companies as a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. And to be honest with you and again our listeners, it started by just an opportunity that I took. Did I feel that 4 years ago I was particularly ready to take on a CISO role for an insurance company that was highly regulated? Perhaps not 100%, but I did say to myself, I will try to make the success story, and I will do my best to learn if I'm missing any point or I have some gaps in that particular role. And because I had the opportunity to work as a consultant before, to do technical cybersecurity work, technical work in general, and as well with roles around pre-sales, business development. So I had both hats, the technical aspect, the cybersecurity knowledge, and the business understanding or the business views and perspective. So when I started that journey, it actually led to other very few different opportunities across bigger companies, where I ended up in 2019 being the Asia Pacific Business Information Security Officer for as well a broking company. And that was a great experience and absolutely amazing learning path as well. And from that perspective, I took again the opportunity and the learning challenge, and I found that there was the gap in the market, and then my company created the SaaS platform. And nowadays, I feel after the recent acquisition, because Responsible Cyber just recently acquired another startup, which I was a shareholder with, that startup was doing identity management, and combining both allows to bring a one-stop shop for SMEs or small, medium enterprises or businesses. So I feel like wherever I go, I build things. I make them working. So now I'm trying to go into a next journey that will also allow me to build some new stuff and create value for companies and create value for CISOs. Because again, coming from different backgrounds and different perspectives, I think I help to bridge that gap. And that has been really something that I was good at, I think, because of my quick evolution in the field and in the industry in general.
Magda, the other thing you've built is a very strong reputation as a keynote speaker or presenter at cybersecurity events all over the globe. You were a speaker at the CyberCon conference in Melbourne last year, ACE's annual conference, and you were also penciled in to speak at BrizSec earlier this year before it was postponed. So you travel the world speaking at these events. What was that lifestyle like? So many different cities, so many different countries, so many different crowds. What was that sort of lifestyle like?
I love being busy by this kind of opportunities. I just love meeting new people. I feel I can bring some learning and good outcomes, for whoever attends the events. So for me, being a keynote speaker is actually something that is almost, I want to say, not a working, experience. It's just a pleasure, passion. I really do enjoy it very much, and I'm very happy when I share as well some positive energy with the audience. And in general, this is the feedback that I get as well. But of course, we're talking about learning. So when I present on any topic, that I feel that I'm learning at the same time that I'm sharing my knowledge. So this is another point that I feel can be very valuable for whoever is thinking to become a speaker. But on the other side, of course, when the coronavirus pandemic hit and we had the obligation to stay at home and restrict travel, of course, I felt that I'm missing the opportunity to go out and take just the plane and go to another country and meet other people and share the experiences from my point of view and discuss with them what are their challenges. So of course, in terms of lifestyle, again, not everyone likes to be on the plane very often. As an example, and this is something that we discussed before, in 2019 and 18, I was traveling very extensively. So in 1 month, I could do 5 countries from one part of the world to the other one. And I found that it was a little bit too much, too exhausting for me. So I decided just to put a limit to myself and go into a maximum of 1 travel per month. That also keeps to have a balance between, your speaking engagements and then of course your work, because I still need to work. It's again, even if speaking can be a work engagement, you still need to deliver for your clients, for whatever you're doing, and especially as a CISO, sometimes I found myself, having to have 2 or 3 laptops with me, and between talks I go to the meeting room, close the room, and then try to work on some very important stuff. So it's never ending. And that means that the person who is actually in that particular lifestyle or decides to go there needs to really like that speed. Not everyone likes to work under pressure all the time. I feel I'm alive when I do that, and I enjoy doing that. When it stops, I feel like, oh, what's going on? How come there's nothing that's happening, why no one is calling me, even if it's like half an hour? So it's actually really interesting, but I think it's more a personality aspect than anything else. And again, it's something that depends on you as an individual. Do you like that? Or would you rather have a peaceful day with some usual task and nothing that is unpredictable? Because obviously, if you're traveling all over the world, and you speak at conferences, or even you meet potential clients, or you meet just potential colleagues or colleagues in general, you don't know what can happen. And it's not like everything is perfect or arranged, especially when you don't have limits into which countries you travel. So you can have from a delay in the plane, which actually will impact your work or your communication with the clients, to some, as an example, some trouble with your passport that will actually make your travel impossible for a certain period of time. Again, so the imaginable scenarios can be very, very different, and the pressure and the stress levels that someone can take on, plus the associated risk, is something that is an individual decision rather than coming from just the professional point of view.
Okay, and so I mentioned earlier that you were coming to speak at BrisSec, ACE's Brisbane event earlier this year. What was you had a whole schedule teed up before that, didn't you, of extensive travel and events? Can you just describe that? What was the journey that was winding up in Brisbane?
Well, first of all, I had a journey, a kind of almost world tour in March 2020 that was planned. I was starting by a conference in Munich, then I was supposed to go to Scotland, and then from Scotland I was supposed to go to Tunisia, and then from Tunisia to Poland, and then from Poland to Brisbane. And 48 hours before the flight, and literally it was actually supposed to be a few hours before the flight, but I needed to change my flight last minute. So the first change of flight that happened already when the coronavirus pandemic got announced, and then a second change 48 hours before me jumping into the flight, going to the airport, where I received the call and said, okay, everything's canceled. Don't go to the airport, don't do your check-in, it's not gonna happen. And of course, that means a lot of cancellation. That means a lot of things that were planned cannot happen. Not talking about the practical aspect of getting 2 hours on the phone with the travel agencies and trying to make sure that you get your flights canceled, if any cancellation were possible, because I guess everyone has experienced that with the current worldwide change of traveling and restrictions all over the world, people just couldn't get in touch with the travel agencies or the airlines, and therefore they might have lost their tickets, or they just couldn't have any refunds. So I wasn't an exception, by the way. That also happened, and certain things were really irreversible. But again, for me, that's part of what can happen. It's in this particular case, it was a worldwide pandemic, but again, if you travel a lot, you don't know what to expect. So there are risks associated every time, and risks, again, it's something that's part of our life. And your risk appetite as an individual comparing to a cybersecurity professional might be also different from one person to another. So yeah, I'm still very excited about the opportunity. I hope it will happen very soon after the lockdown is lifted and we can travel again and share the knowledge in the cybersecurity field. I'm just very excited about it and looking forward to it.
Now, so you've established that very solid business career and speaking career. How have you found? How's that been as a woman? Were there any disadvantages to being a woman along the way that you can identify?
Thank you, Nick, for bringing this question. I think it's a controversial question, and it raises different perception and feeling, whoever's, listening to any answer or reading about it. So it's interesting to see that I recently read a report and white paper from press mentioning that they did this research, and there was findings saying that women in the industry didn't feel any kind of disadvantage or a particular different just reaction towards gender. Well, perhaps it mainly depends as well on where you are and which kind of environment you're working in as well. And we need to remember that research is based on a particular sample of individuals. It's not an absolute science as well. So me working in 5 different countries before Singapore, I experienced different cultures. And I have a different experience and feedback in each of those countries. And that experience goes from very positive to less positive to very negative one sometimes. So it depends, again, where you are, what's the environment, the culture of the country, but as well as the culture of the company. We can't generalize. But as an example, and this is, I think, a wake-up call for as well our industry. This is not because I call myself a cyber feminist hacker, which actually also is controversial. This is something, it's a fact. This is what happened to me. Well, like 1 year ago, or perhaps even a little bit less, I went to a meeting. And then the meeting was with two individuals that were in the technological field. And well, their first reaction was, oh, we were expecting a white hair, middle-aged man. And this was their comment. I'm not adding anything. It's a real story that happened. And I mean, for whoever is listening, how do you think I felt? Like, you know, going into a meeting with my experience, with my credential, with my motivation to help them, and hearing that coming up as an initiation of a meeting cannot bring anything positive. So again, if we have some perspectives or biases, we need to ensure that we actually think about those and do not mention this kind of comments, especially without knowing the experience of the individual, without taking the opportunity to ask them first, at least, what's the experience, what do they have to bring to the table. Again, there are conscious and there are unconscious biases. They're still there, and we cannot generalize. I have as well had amazing male mentors that without them, I wouldn't be able to be today where I am. And as an example, and I'm sure he's not expecting that, but I really want to mention him, Darren Argyle, who is a very well-known Chief Information Security Officer in our industry, has been amazing, you know, mentor for me. He has been very reachable. You know, I could ask him any question. He led with an example. I could rely on him when it came to recommendations and advice in my engagements, in whatever I have been doing. So I think we cannot generalize, but we need to understand that those unconscious biases, or conscious sometimes, are still there. It depends on where we are, depends on the company's culture as well. Some companies are very, very good into diversity and inclusion in general, not only around gender. And some companies are really, really bad. I mean, when you go on companies, which also is a very practical, realistic example, and you see that across the management and the board is exactly the same profile, then there's no diversity and inclusion. We're not talking about any gender bias. We're talking just in general, diversity. So again, we need to be open-minded. We need to understand that the problem is still there. And the problem perhaps needs a different behavior, needs talks, but actions as well, from as well male and female professionals. It doesn't come from only female professionals. And of course, talking about it and avoiding being, you know, driven by some stigmas or, you know, perception that, oh, cyber feminism, for example, which I am using as just encouraging women in cybersecurity, sometimes can be perceived as a very negative term by people just going into my profile. No, I'm not saying female professionals are better or should be treated better. I'm just trying to bring egalitarian opportunities for female professionals and for male professionals. And that's very important. That's the message that I'm bringing to the table.
Very well said indeed. And so you mentioned advice then. So while we've got you, ASA, a lot of ASA's members are CISOs themselves. Do you have some advice that you could give to CISOs, people who are in a CISO position right now? What would be your top bit of advice that you could give to a CISO now about how to better do their job?
So Nick, I got the opportunity to be a CISO from a small, medium enterprise to a very large multinational company. And I think the difference between those two environments is very small, because the key points that come down to a successful CISO journey is actually the first tip or recommendation is don't assume that others know about security. As you evolve as an individual to become a chief information security officer, you can't just think that your CTO, your CIO, your development heads, everyone else knows about cybersecurity or has any clue about it even. I go further. It's not the case. The second tip or the second recommendation that I will give is communication is key. So when you come, especially as a new chief information security officer in a company, you have, especially the company had already some policies, had already cybersecurity in place. You would imagine that you get some solid foundation to start your work. Well, if you don't communicate with the different stakeholders, you will not find out that actually certain things or certain assumptions that you got from, your predecessor are missing some of the, findings, some of the gaps, some of your inventory even, or technological stack. I mean, this is what happened across different projects that I've been working on. You had a certain view, and then you realize when you're on the job and you discuss with the stakeholders, but wait a minute, are you using that? Where is it written? It's not written anywhere. And this is, I think, again, we're not talking about inventories that come from unknown IT, shadow IT, or inventories that come from different sources. We're talking about just ensuring communication with different business stakeholders and making sure that they tell you what is there in their word, because they might never communicated before with the security, and therefore they never informed them about this. And then the third point, the third advice, and I think it's very different from perhaps other CISO discussions, is make yourself approachable. I mean, it's not about being, the expert in your field. It's about sharing your knowledge to increase the cybersecurity maturity of that company. So if the employees are fearful about asking questions or getting in touch with you, even as a C-level executive, then you're not making a change, because they will not just reach out with an email or with a question or with anything. So, and especially in our industry, there are some, individuals who feel that they had achieved a lot, and it is a big achievement anyway. You go through a lot of learning to become a CISO, especially when you become a CISO of a very big multinational company. But again, keep in mind that being approachable will help you achieve the best result in your work. And this goes not only for the whole employees of the company, but as well for your own team. If your own team doesn't feel that they can go and ask you questions about, am I doing the right thing, then you will not be effective in your strategy, in your roadmap, and it will end up, a kind of false sense of security, in my opinion. So okay. Those are the three.
Some great advice there. What about ASA also has a lot of members who are on their way up to a CISO role. They're heading towards that. What advice would you give to those members? Is there an attitude that they need to adopt? Is there experience they need to gain? For those that are aspiring to become CISOs, what would you tell them?
So first of all, a first very important point: learn, and learn. I mean, no one, of course, knows it all. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, we're talking about a complex, I would say, industry with many domains and evolving technologies. So as an individual who is working in the field, you will not be able to know it all. But it's really important to learn. So don't just let yourself, I want to use the word fooled, but I reached this stage, I'm good at what I'm doing, and that's it. I can now evolve as a CISO. No, just keep on learning every day. and ensure that whatever you're saying there, you also bring that visibility to whoever you're talking with. You tell them that you are not an expert in everything. So it aligns expectations, and where if you learn and you take the time, it also brings credibility. So it's really important. Learning and credibility is the first point. The second point, and I think this is definitely the best career advice that I can give to any aspiring CISO or someone who's in the field trying to get into a C executive role, leadership role. Take the time to understand the convergence between business and security. If you are aspiring to become a CISO, you need to understand the business. And here, one really interesting point that perhaps might change the career of some of ESA members is take the life, one day in the life of a business owner. As an example, do it. Just go and shadow someone in the business to understand what are their priorities. How do they see the world? I think one of my success factors is that I was a business owner, that I had the business experience before, in addition of the technology and cybersecurity expertise. The convergence of both is what makes it successful. So this is the second point. And then the third point actually is something that made me realize that there is a perception about a CISO role being very politically driven, especially within big organizations. And this is after a poll that I have done on Twitter, because I was trying to encourage more women and female professionals to apply for CISO roles. And if one feedback that I got is, oh, but it's very politically driven, and then there are decisions that cannot be done very quickly, and then I don't do the right work. I want to make a change. I want to secure the company. Well, as much as I would say that, yes, there are companies that more or less have this still political decisions, you cannot do whatever you want. But in my opinion, and I have seen again, different environment, different maturities, different companies, different industries, you still make a difference. So forget about the political aspect of the role and think about how much you can change in a company, how much impact as a CISO you can do, how much learning, how much improvement of the security posture you can achieve. Even if it's like, let's say, 50% of your full roadmap, you will still make that change. So again, go for it. It doesn't matter that you will not make it perfect, because perfection doesn't exist. You will still make a change. So think about it as an opportunity to make the word, and here's a little bit, the very positive message, but to make the world a better place by doing the small part from your side as well.
Well, yeah, they were great insights, Magda. I might just loop back to your travel schedule just to finish off, just on a bit more of a lighthearted note. All those countries that you visit, and all those, I guess, all those meals out when you're staying at hotels, do you have a favorite cuisine around the world? Where favorite cuisine, or a favorite city to eat?
I would start by Italian cuisine as the most, fabulous cuisine in the world. This is my opinion, and they have amazing wine as well. But I have been to Australia last year, and I would say you guys have also amazing cuisine. And I mean, the steaks, it's amazing, just absolutely yummy. So I would say the advantage of traveling is that you discover a lot of different foods. But my favorite is definitely the Italian food. And then I would say Australian food is not far away as well.
particularly the catering at CyberCon, Magda.
Yeah, absolutely. But Nick, one point as well that I would like to say is that when you travel a lot and you attend a lot of conferences, you find yourself tempted to eat all those amazing, food available, and they are free as well as conferences, So one thing that I learned is that if I leave myself to, just eat everything nice that I find, then it becomes out of, any limit. So I try to actually try everything that I find, like, let's say, original, new, but I limit the amount. And that's actually key as well. That's my advice in terms of food.
Otherwise, you might have to, by the end of the year, you might have to book 2 plane tickets rather than the 1.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, Dr. Magda Chelly, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I'm here in Brisbane, Australia. You're there in Singapore. We hope to thank you for your time, and very much looking forward to seeing you at an ACER event in Australia when it's safe to do so. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much for having me. And I'm hoping to bring some new updates when I come to visit Australia, because I'm working on some exciting new ventures. So hopefully some news very soon.
Look out on Twitter and LinkedIn, I guess.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Doctor. Bye.
Bye-bye.